on the 10th of September this year, US attorneys endorsed a plan to add warning labels to social media apps. This comes as it seems to be part of Western culture or Western countries to crack down on a legal point of view to protect our children and stop or change or have a way of controlling the content that they are able to see online. Quote, today, over 40 state attorneys general have called for Congress to impose safety labels on social media platforms, which have included warnings for potential risks to children. End quote. Philip Cadgett and Murphy reported in the Times this week that, quote, the mental health crisis among young people is an emergency, and social media needs to engage in important contributions. And the average study has spent more than 3 hours per day on social media. That doubles the risk of anxiety, depression symptoms, and an average use in this age group across summer of 23 was 4.8 hours. Additionally, half say those who use social media are worried about making their body feel worse or feeling worse about their body. So personally, I have found the fact that children are spending 3 hours a day on social media really worrying, and it's clearly a larger question, a larger sign, a larger conversation. But for me, I question, is it socially? Is it a local thing where they have no way to go and see their friends, or no way to potentially have access to their network, or have a network locally if they are rural, which is a point that was added on an episode from last week at the time of recording that I wanted to bring up as well. But also it's this question of, are they building a skill set to be social? Now, in some cases, we may find that they want to do that from a gaming point of view, so building those gaming communities and building those connections through video games, or more traditionally in the football fields, in the rugby fields, etc., more jock style. But I think it does open up a question, and unfortunately this episode's going to be very there's a lot of talk in this episode, and a lot of the topics in this episode are around safety online for children. So I'm going to an extent try not to repeat myself, but it does bring back this question that I have, which is who is responsible specifically for making sure that, say for example, a child is not spending 3 hours a day on their phone, and if they are, what content are they watching, right? Is it the government, is it the social media platforms, or is it actually down to the parents, right? Now, it may be difficult, it may be challenging, but also, I've seen in the past personally that the TikTok algorithm is designed, for those who don't know, to push, specifically the TikTok algorithm, but the others will do the same or be in the same position when they're interest graph based. They will push whatever is being watched. So say for example, you have a loop where a user, this user could be a child, could be an adult, could be an adolescent, but it's worse obviously if it's a child, where they're in a situation where as they watch more kind of quote-unquote depressing content, or content that could send them on a more depressive spiral, they are going to get fed more of that content by TikTok, right? Because that's the way the algorithm is designed. It's designed to feed the user more content that they're going to enjoy, but the same works the other way when you break the algorithm the other way. So let's say for example you're into positivity or gaming or football or dogs or cats or whatever, it's also going to show you those, right? So this is the interest in the interest graph. And I think for me, putting warning labels and stuff on the social media platforms is a good start and could help some people and could make parents slightly more aware of some of the risks. But I think for me, I know it's hard to say, but I think personally for me, it's how do you allow, or do you allow your child to be on social media for that length of time, right? How are they spending their time? And again, it comes back to that question of who's responsible for how a child spends their time. Personally, I think that a parent should have a level of insight into what their child is doing on their phone. Now, that's easier said than done, I'm sure, but I think it's very important for a parent to be part of that process and in some ways monitor the content they're consuming, but also how maybe them spending that time on social media could actually hurt them. Could they spend that time researching stuff or building a skill set or etc. And is it your job as a parent to help nurture or help push them in that direction, I guess, is the question that comes. And I would pose you, those who are listening to this, to think about that and consider that as well. And I think it's difficult, but there is some evidence, moving back slightly to my notes, that says evidence from tobacco studies show that the warning labels can increase awareness and changes of behaviour. When asked if a warning from the gentleman who we just referred to would prompt or limit or monitor their child's social media use, 76% on a recent study of Latino parents said yes. Right now, there has also been reports questioning, well, what would that work on social media, right? As we don't necessarily look at usage agreements, we don't necessarily, we just agree to terms and conditions so we can use these apps, etc. It's the same conversation where if you have a warning, is it a kind of get out of jail free card for your TikToks, for your Metas, for your Snapchats, etc.? Or would the warning labels actually help, which it kind of implies it would here, would it actually help parents from being more aware of what's going on social media? But again, for me, I personally think, and I hate pointing fingers at people or sharing it, but this is my view, I think you as a parent, regardless how hard it is, you need to be investing and putting money and time and energy and resources into, potentially, maybe not money necessarily, but definitely time and energy into looking at what your kid is doing on social media, because it's really, really important. And it's difficult to balance everything, sure, and that's really difficult to say, but I think for me that's how you can combat something like this, etc. Because I guess you could make the argument to say, well, if it's an attention thing, and do you go after the accounts that are making it or making this kind of content? That is an approach, sure, and that kind of comes back to that. But then you can make a counter argument and say, well, is it related to the government? Do we need to legislate against what kind of content can and can't be created? Where's the line, etc.? Those kind of things. And I think for me, there's no easy answer here. The proposal will go to Congress for further action, but if and when we hear more, I'll be sure to share more on this. But I've shared a little bit of my opinion. I would love to hear what you think down below.